Welcome to What's the Finish, our weekly podcast where we talk to experts and individuals just like you to discuss not only the flavors and finishes of spirits and foods, but also all the flavors life has to offer, along with the magnificent finishes they bring. So join our host, David Afariat, as he asks the question, what's the finish?
Hello, everybody. Bonjour à tout le monde, à toutes et à tous. Welcome to the podcast, folks, where we discuss food, champagne, and culture, and we really discuss how to be present for life's shared moments and how to elevate those moments and thrive in the next. As usual, I'm with my co-pilot, Jeff Sisalt. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, David. How are you today? I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm feeling well today. It's sunny. It's great, and I'm still thinking about some of the champagne we had over the weekend, and I'm ready to kind of step into and talk a little bit about my upcoming trip actually to France. So there's lots on the checklist of getting an itinerary right.
And so where in France are you going? Let's talk about that real quick.
Sure. So the flight takes me from ATL to Charles de Gaulle, and then I will immediately. And I can't believe I'm doing this, but I will immediately jump on a train to go to Reims, to the Champagne region. So,
nice.
Skip everything that Paris has for the moment just to get. And I think the next day, you leave in the evening of day one. You arrive in the morning, day two, and then on day three, I have my 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to be meeting with a couple of wine producers, and we're going to talk about our plans for the year and the process and the platform that is Avid Vines, and get their commitment for the remainder of the year and into next year.
That's great. Yeah. I love it. That actually reminds me of something that you talk about a lot with me, especially. You talk about one farmer, one family aspect of the wines, right? So is that what's going to happen at the trip? You're going to be talking to one farmer with one family, and you go from there?
Well, you're exactly right, and I say that a lot, and I probably will. Like, I've never sat down with the producers, to explain this concept to them, because it's all about, they give me their product, which I've purchased, I bring it back to the U.S. on these chilled containers, and then it's our job at Avid Vines to then talk to consumers, talk to the trade about just how special these champagnes are, and I will run it by them as to, like, this is how I frame, the product you've created, because, this is not a, it's always a numbers game, but it's not a quantity. It is, how do we build your brand to command a higher price, because there's so little of it. And what is that conversation like? And so one of the most effective things effective arguments that I speak to when I'm at tastings at restaurants or I'm describing these champagnes, I get everyone's instant attention when I say, these champagnes, you drink, you buy, you enjoy these champagnes, you share them, in the moments that you want to elevate, and you wind up supporting a farmer and their families. I mean, it is, in this case, it's Julien. It is one farmer and one family. That's it. These awesome. It's not like a purchased, you're not buying it from a cooperative of multiple farmers or multiple parcels of land from across different farmers. Right. You support one way of making this wine and one farmer and one family committed to doing it.
So you said two things in that little dissertation that I want to dive into a little bit before we get into things, but I want to make sure that it's brought to the surface here a little bit. And that is, you help them build their brand. One thing you said. The other thing is, we bring everything over on chilled containers, right? And I think that's a unique aspect of one of the things that you guys do at Avid Vines, right? And that is one of the ways that I would imagine you help them build their brand because of that whole process. Talk to me about that real quick.
I think this is with any company too. You've got to understand who the stakeholders are, and companies have, any company. If you take investment from a company, one of your stakeholders are going to be, the investors and the board that they've assembled to report about the status of how you're spending, those funds. Another, obviously, are your customers, And then a third might be, the distribution, your relationships with the wholesalers that might sell your product. And that's no different with Avid. And that in fact I've just described, who our stakeholders are. Avid has got to be able to talk to obviously the producers of champagne, to go to them and say, this is how I'm adding value to a product you've already, created lovingly and has an enormous amount of value. What do I do? Well, at Avid Vines, we bring it over on these chilled containers at 13 degrees Celsius, at 57 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's our commitment to make sure that these wines aren't dulled by the long trip, 6 to 7 weeks, 6 weeks on the water, 1 week stuck at port under sweltering heat, that I'm telling you, the other mass produced and mass marketed champagnes suffer from. That's a fact. That's why it concentrates the wrong things. It can lead to inflammation. It can lead to systemic reaction, and it gives you a headache. But not this stuff, because it just hasn't been bombarded by the heat, the sun. No one's bringing this stuff over, on a plane. It's just too expensive. So it's got to come over on a boat, and only 5% is ever put into a chilled container of all that wine.
Wow.
Coming to the U.S.
So when you say chilled container, literally, does it go from their farm, wherever they make the champagne, onto chilled containers that go on, onto chilled trucks that go onto chilled containers? What is that process? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So the wines kind of are stacked and racked on a pallet, and then however many pallets I'm buying, they're put onto a truck, and that truck. Maybe 50% of the time it's refrigerated, but it depends on where I'm sending it. Sometimes, and it depends on shipping routes, right? So you make a calculation between, okay, it leaves France, it leaves, the Champagne region, and sometimes it will go to the French port in Normandy called Havre, and out of Havre it goes to New York and then down to, and that's on a chilled container. So to go to Normandy from Champagne, it's not even, you do that in a day.
Got it.
Sometimes the product will go down to Italy, and it will leave out of a port in Italy called you got me. I forget the name of it, but begins with an L. And so it'll leave out of that port in Italy, and wherever it goes, then the fun part is, and sometimes we do this on social media, but we'll track that there's maritime websites that, here's the transponder of the boat carrying your product. And so I'll check in on it every day. It's like, oh, okay, great. It's going around the Horn of Italy, and now it's going out wherever it's got to pass. Right. However it's got to pass. Here it is on its way to New York. Great. Now it's stopped in Savannah, Georgia. Okay, great. So it's fun to track it, but does it have to be constantly refrigerated, is your question? No, but I mean, the most dangerous part of the logistical of the supply chain is putting it on a container that is not refrigerated while it sits and floats on the water, for 6 weeks. I mean, that is, ugh. So if you refrigerate and climate control the environment, then you can be protected from what happens after it lands in the port in the U.S. Maybe it's put into a truck, it gets to a distributor, the distributor takes it to a retail store. Some distributors do a good job of keeping refrigerated, trucks on the road. Sure. Some don't, but you're still going to, unless you're sitting in Austin, Texas at 120 degrees, in the summer, and you go watch a baseball game,
right?
It's going to be able to withstand, an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours of, kind of moving around.
Got it. Cool. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Cause I was curious how that works. And, you did a great explanation, because, the other 95% that don't do chilled containers are subject to alterations of the body of the champagne or the wine, the taste of the champagne or the wine, right? It's all that stuff.
That's why wine doesn't taste as good as when you're there in the vineyard. It's not because you're just on vacation, although that helps your mental state. It's not because you're smelling like, lavender in the air, which is carried on by the breeze, by nearby, that's part of it. But it's also because you're so close to the source. It hasn't been damaged. Believe it or not, in another life, I wrote an article on wine for Texas Monthly. And believe it or not, every state in the union makes some quantities of wine. Some of them are more famous to be, actually consumable, and others are turned into God knows what.
Hmm.
But there's Georgia wine and there's Texas wine, and Texas wine is along the I-35 corridor that links Dallas to Austin to San Antonio. You have a large, contingent of decent Texas wine, and I'm telling you, they're actually good they're tasted right out of the barrel at the vineyard.
Right.
But try to put them on a shelf in a neighboring state and try to put them through the process of the distribution, and they bruise easily, and they just start, they don't. You got to start off with great genes like in California, and in France in order to make sure it can withstand. Like if I bought flowers from Holland, tulips, right? If I put them in the container and didn't refrigerate it,
Yeah.
I opened up the doors after 6 weeks. These things look like it's going to be a hot mess.
Yep.
And yet we expect wine to be better.
Interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned Austin. Quick side story. My wife and I were down there for a wedding a couple of years back, and we kind of toured around Austin for a little bit, and then we happened to see this sign that said there's a winery, and we're like, oh, let's go find it. Well, it was like in the backwoods of Texas. If I tell you, like we were taking all these back roads, and all of a sudden, boom, there's this winery. We're like, wow, that's awesome, right? So I kind of go up there and just look and see what they have, and I'm like, all right, I'll take one of those. Well, I thought it was, I'm used to paying at a winery like that, it's anywhere from $27 to $35 a bottle, maybe 40. The guy goes, that'll be $54. And I'm like, for one bottle?
Right.
I'm like, okay, I didn't want to look like the idiot, so I took it. But it was really, my point of that is, it was really good though. I really enjoyed it.
That's good.
It was good. It was worth the money. So that was the good news there. So, but yeah, I was surprised. Out in the middle of nowhere, Austin, there was this winery.
I love it. No, I love
it. So now, well, let's talk about the other side of that, which is their brand, right? The marketing aspect of it and what you bring to the one farmer, one family. So talk a little bit about that for me. Talk about why and how Avid does this whole branding of their particular family's champagnes.
Yeah, I think that's what people are looking for. They're looking for an authentic product. They're looking for authenticity, and they're looking for high quality. And they will pay for an experience that brings them that. And it just becomes then a game of how do you build awareness? I don't have enough to, excuse me.
Connection lost.
Sorry, I've had a little technology.
Do that again, just so I'll cut that out.
The connection reestablished.
Hold on, we're going to cut this out. Let me close all this actually. Let's take a quick second.
Yep.
Okay. All right, that will not happen again. So we were talking about
the marketing, the brand.
Right. So I think people are looking for authentic products that are high quality, and it's just a game of raising the awareness. And I don't have a budget, and I don't have a quantity to mass market, these champagnes, but my job is to allocate them to people who are looking for this formula of exceptional experiences with authentic products made by people that they can visit and they could see and that they can know. It's no different than kind of like what Whole Foods does with local farmers to bring attention, awareness around, hey, look, these beets actually came from a farm that was, not across country lines, or another part of the world, or even across the country. These came from a place that's 20 miles away. Okay, great. That's fantastic. And people expect the ones that I'm pleasing are the ones who expect that with every product they have. They want to know the origin, the provenance, and that's relatively a new phenomenon that's always existed in Europe, but less so in the United States. And that could be a separate episode, Jeff, when I talk about like why Americans are more concerned about, well, what's in the bottle? What are the ingredients? Like with the FDA, the nutrition label, and there's a big reason for that, right? Because we want to know what's in it. We want to know how many dyes are used, but we all know that there are no nutrition labels and ingredient labels on wine, because wine is regulated not by the FDA, which controls those items that are beverages and food items. It's because the Alcohol and Tobacco Firearms Division of the U.S. Treasury is the one who regulates alcohol, and they don't require putting any kind of ingredients or labels on alcoholic beverages. So it becomes as it's always been, for centuries, since we started doing this, decades, they don't have to tell you what's in it, which is why it becomes even more important on the back label of our wines from Andre Tessier is to make sure that you see the symbol for sustainable wine production and the symbol for organic wine production, because it's those symbols that aren't just handed out or made up. They represent an audit of air, water, and land that the producers must satisfy in order to get that certification. That's also raising awareness and educating. But it comes down to quality. And I got something I want to share with you, actually. I was, there's a crazy bookstore / tapas or small bite restaurant / wine bar in Buckhead area of Atlanta, right? Really Tony area.
That's kind of a unique combination.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's a bizarre. So they have a wall of like curated books. It's like a book lover and a wine lover came together, and they produced this kind of store. And they're great people. It's called the Lucian in Atlanta, Georgia. If you get a chance to go, I highly recommend it. In spite of the fact that they don't carry the Andre Tessier champagnes yet, but that day will come. Regardless, I'm a fan of the approach, and I'm always rooting for it. And the other day I walked in and I bought this beautiful 2-volume set coffee table book about champagne. I'm like, well, I can always learn something more. And I open up the book, and one of the first things I do is to say, okay, let's look at the index, right? Because the index, this is how I also attack a cookbook. I love to cook, and it's not so much what the table of contents or the chapters reveal, as so much as when I look at a cookbook, I go to the index, and just behind the index, there's often sections that say, here are special ingredients and where to get them. And I'm like, oh, cool. I want to know about that special ingredient.
Sure.
Or I look at the sauces section, and I'll say, okay, great. In the index, I'm going to look up sauces, and there's like 10 of them. And okay, great. This is how they make an aioli. This is how they make a pesto. Oh, great. So in the index, for those who love books, I went to look up the vineyard to see if this whole tome about champagne talks about the location of where Andre Tessier champagnes are made, which is called a little parcel of Premier Cru designated land from a hamlet called Chigny-les-Roses. Okay, Chigny-les-Roses. And in fact, of this little hamlet where the wines are, the vineyards lie, and where the wines are come from, 94% of this is, there are some parcels of land that not all of it is dedicated to Premier Cru or Grand Cru. Sometimes some hamlets, regions produce 75% of their grapes toward these upper echelon categories of champagne. There's Champagne, Premier Cru, and Grand Cru. And so Chigny-les-Roses produces 94% that go into this category of Premier Cru and Grand Cru, which is pretty high among all among all these little towns that are in Champagne. But what I was looking at is, did you know, so I just didn't realize this, is that the makers of Jay-Z's vaunted and expensive Ace of Spades champagne is made from the same town where Andre Tessier grapes are grown and made. And so that floors me, because what that tells me is, first of all, Jay-Z's champagne it is not that bad because it comes from the same, the same place as Andre Tessier, but you're not spending $1,000, for this bottle as you will either at retail or even God knows how much more in a club or
Sure.
restaurant. So folks, this becomes quite a bargain to drink Andre Tessier champagne here in the US and pay a fraction, like 10% of
Wow.
what that would cost you, less than 10%.
Well, that's what notoriety and marketing will do for you, right? And all these famous people are really getting into all this. There's all the tequila making people now, and now the champagnes, and it's taking the marketing aspect. And you talked about how you don't do the mass marketing. You do it more looking for the people that are looking for it. They're kind of doing mass marketing to a certain degree, right? Because they're bringing awareness. So that's what it can do, but it's not always the best way to do it. I think it's a great point by you. It's like, why pay $1,000 for something you can, buy for $100?
I mean,
$150.
yeah, or even less. there's 5 of these champagnes, and they go from, what a retail price would probably be about 65 to 70 in the store, all the way up to 150. But that's the effect that mass marketing short circuits your brain. It
Yep.
short circuits your decision making. And all this money is invested to say, hey, don't think about it. I'm just telling you what to buy. And
Right.
people go, if I want to impress, or if I want to achieve this effect in other people's mind, I've got to buy this.
Yeah.
Well, to those who quietly know like where to go, this is one of the greatest champagne hacks that you will find. And
Right.
with every sip, you'll enjoy it 3 times. You'll enjoy the taste of it. You'll enjoy the impact on your wallet. And then you will enjoy it the next day when you wake up with no regrets.
I love it. I love it. Hey, David, this has been very insightful. Love that we're talking about this stuff. I love that we're doing and supporting one farmer and one family. And that's one of the goals of what you bring to the table and why it's so different. So thanks for doing that. And thanks for bringing that awareness to us. I love it. So enjoy your trip in France. It's going to be fun.
Yes. Thank you. And thanks for tuning in for another episode. We'll come up with more, and I'll have plenty of stories when I come back for sure.